Dragon Ball fans have been waiting years, well over a decade actually, man makes me feel old, for the return of the Budokai Tenkaichi series. And now, after all that time, Sparking Zero is finally here, a full-blown current-gen Budokai Tenkaichi game built from the ground up with modern visuals, a massive roster, and all the spectacle you would expect from an official release, and everyone hates it. No, I'm just kidding. It's a decent sequel. But while Sparking Zero is stealing the spotlight, it's not the only option. There's another game out there, a definitely legal game that is definitely not any copyright infringement at all game. A game that's been quietly evolving in the background for years, fueled entirely by the dedication of die-hard Budokai Tenkaichi fans. Enter Budokai Tenkaichi 4, the ultimate fan-made mod that takes Tenkaichi 3 and cranks it up to 11. This isn't just a simple resolution and texture upgrade, this is a full-fledged expansion of what made the original games legendary. New characters, updated mechanics, reworked game modes, and a ton of extra content that breathes new life into a game that is already considered one of the best Dragon Ball Z experiences ever made, according to the internet. It's the only opinion it knows. So now that we have both games, the real question is, which one is better?
It's free real estate.
One major advantage that Tenkaichi 4 has over Sparking Zero is simply the fact that it is completely free. No expensive price tag, no overpriced DLC, no pre-order bonuses that lock content behind paywalls. Just download the mod, set it up, and you're good to go. In a time when games are getting more expensive and companies are constantly finding new ways to nickel and dime you, the idea of getting a fully fledged Dragon Ball experience without spending a dime is pretty nice and pretty rare, and honestly, thank But of course, there's a catch. It's not as simple as just popping in a disc or downloading it from a digital storefront. Since Tenkaichi 4 is a fan-made mod, getting it up and running takes a bit of effort. Not that much, but enough to turn some people off. Like people who are like, don't even think to restart something when it's not working. Those kind of people. Like my mum. But trust me, if I can get it running, then you can get it running. But in case if you need a bit of help, here is a quick tutorial. How to play Tenkaichi 4 on PC. To play Tenkaichi 4 on PC, you'll need the PCSX2 emulator. Next, you'll need the actual Tenkaichi 4 game, which you can download from the Team BT4 website. When you have it downloaded, place the ROM into your PCSX2 game library. Then just load it up and it should go. But it doesn't look as good as it could. And also you may notice that everything looks like it's in French. Well, that is probably because you have downloaded the Spanish version, as there is both an English and a Spanish version of the ROM. And if you don't speak either of those languages, then you can get fucked. Once you have downloaded the right version of Tenkaichi 4, you'll also want to download the extra folder as well. Copy the contents of the extra folder to your PCSX2 emulator's installation path and replace the files. This will fix graphical errors with the characters. If you want to use the game upscaled to 1080p or 4K, then go into the game's properties and select the resolution you want. Now it should look pretty good. Tutorial over. No more learning, we're done with that. Sparking Zero absolutely delivers when it comes to the roster size. There's no denying that. It's one of the biggest selling points for the game. Seeing so many characters, transformations, and iconic fighters packed into a single experience is undeniably impressive. But here's the thing. What's the point of having all these characters if the game doesn't give you much of a reason to actually use them? And that's where Sparking Zero starts to stumble. Outside of the story mode, which naturally focuses on a select group of fighters, there's just not much single player content that encourages you to explore the full roster. Sure, you can jump into free battle and mess around, but without a unique challenges or engaging offline modes, it all starts to feel a little bit hollow. If you want to truly test your skills with different characters, your main option is to go online, and that's where another problem pops up. The online meta is a whole issue in itself. Like with any fighting game, some characters are just going to be way stronger than others, and players will naturally gravitate towards the best ones. That means, despite Sparking Zero having a massive roster, you're realistically going to see the same handful of characters over and over again. If you're looking for variety, you're probably not going to find it in online play. On the other hand, Budokai Tenkaichi 4 takes a different approach. While it doesn't quite match Sparking Zero in sheer numbers, it still boasts a huge roster. And more importantly, it actually gives you a reason to experiment with different characters. With a variety of offline modes including Mission 100 and other unique challenges, the game actively pushes you to try out fighters you might not normally pick. Whether it's through specific match conditions or AI battles that encourage diverse strategies, Tenkaichi 4 makes sure its roster actually matters beyond just being a checklist of characters. So at the end of the day, while Sparking Zero wins in terms of pure numbers, Tenkaichi 4 arguably makes better use of its roster. I like to play with myself. If you're looking for a polished and cinematic story mode, then neither of them really fit the bill, to be perfectly honest. But Sparking Zero definitely comes the closest. From the presentation to the voice acting to the sheer number of sagas it covers, it's an ambitious retelling of the Dragon Ball story. But other than the story mode, Sparking Zero feels a bit bare bone when it comes to its single player offerings. It is clear that the game leans heavily on the player base playing online, rather than giving depth to the solo play. In contrast, Tenkaichi 4 shines when it comes to its single player content. This fan-made mod isn't just about recreating the Budokai Tenkaichi 3 experience, it expands on it, bringing back long-lost features that the official series abandoned over the years. It's the kind of single-player content that adds longevity, rewarding players who enjoy exploring different fighters and trying out new strategies rather than just sticking to the same handful of top-tier characters. The story mode is still here, and while in comparison to Sparking Zero it is a lot less polished, it still offers a pretty decent retelling of Dragon Ball Super. Another area where Tenkaichi 4 surprisingly pulls ahead is in stage variety. While Sparking Zero has impressively large battlefields that allow for some of the biggest, most open fights in the franchise, the actual number of stages is disappointingly low. Tenkaichi 4 on the other hand benefits from Tenkaichi 3's already massive selection of arenas, and the modders have expanded upon it even further, adding even more iconic locations from across the Dragon Ball series. Sure, these stages might not be as large or as detailed as the ones in Sparking Zero, but the sheer variety makes up for it. So when it comes to the single player content, Sparking Zero might have the flash, but Tenkaichi 4 has the depth. Gotta go fast. Now, when it comes to gameplay, this is where things start to get a little more subjective. Well, I guess all of my points are subjective, but this especially so. Both Sparking Zero and Tenkaichi 4 follow the same core Budokai Tenkaichi formula. Large 3D arenas, high-speed combat, and that signature Dragon Ball chaos. But the way they execute it feels noticeably different. Sparking Zero is, without a doubt, the faster of the two. Movement feels snappier, dashes more explosive, and just speed in general plays a much bigger role in the overall flow of combat. If you're coming from the previous Budokai Tenkaichi games, the pacing might catch you off guard at first. It's a noticeable shift towards a more aggressive, high-speed experience. The game wants you to be constantly on the move, making split-second decisions and weaving together attacks with precision. The responsiveness is impressive, and when everything clicks, fights can feel incredibly cinematic in a way that surpasses even the older titles. But that doesn't mean that Tenkaichi 4 is slow. Far from it. While it might not hit the same blistering speeds as Sparking Zero, it still maintains the fluidity and freedom that makes the Budokai Tenkaichi series so much fun to play. The movement feels more natural, and the combat, while maybe not as frantic, is still engaging and satisfying. In some ways it actually benefits from not cranking up the speed to 11. The slightly more measured pace gives you more room to react and strategize rather than just relying on sheer reflexes. Personally, I find myself leaning more towards the Tenkaichi 4 gameplay, but that's probably just because I've had more experience with it. It just feels more comfortable to me, like second nature. The muscle memory I've built up from years of playing the older Budokai Tenkaichi games carries over seamlessly, making it easy to jump in and start having fun without needing to completely adjust my playstyle. But if you're looking for something faster, something that pushes the pacing to the next level, while keeping the Budokai Tenkaichi DNA intact, Sparking Zero might be more your style. It looks good. Graphics. When it comes to visuals, there's really no competition. Sparking Zero is without a doubt the better looking game, and honestly that is to be expected. I'd be pretty disappointed if it looked worse. I'd be like, what have you guys been doing for the last 15 years? Well, At least during battles it looks great. Even though Sparking Zero is visually superior, it doesn't mean Tenkaichi 4 looks bad. The fact that it holds up as well as it does is honestly impressive. Sure, it may not have the same level of detail or cutting edge rendering techniques that Sparking Zero boasts, but it still looks like a proper Dragon Ball game. The cell shading style has aged incredibly well. One major advantage Tenkaichi 4 has though is that it's far less demanding on hardware. Since it's running on an emulator rather than modern consoles, you don't need the latest and greatest system to enjoy it. Even on a mid-range PC, Tenkaichi 4 can run at high resolutions and smooth frame rates without breaking a sweat. If you're on a budget or don't have access to next-gen consoles, Tenkaichi 4 is by far the more accessible option. Sure, looks are important to a game, but it is an aspect that you kind of start getting used to after a while, and the gameplay and game modes become much more important.
Someone once told me the grass is much greener on the other side.
So, which one is actually better? If you're someone who just wants Budokai Tenkaichi 3 but more, Tenkaichi 4 is absolutely the game for you. And honestly, it's hard to argue against it when you consider that it's completely free. It takes the classic Budokai Tenkaichi 3 formula, refines it, and throws in a ton of extra content, making it the ultimate love letter to fans of the old games. Sparking Zero, on the other hand, absolutely captures the spirit of the older titles, but it also very much feels like its own thing. And I don't mean that in a bad way. Personally, I found Sparking Zero's story mode to be a real highlight. The scope, the way it brings key moments to life, it's something I really enjoyed. But when it comes to offline content overall, Tenkaichi 4 just offers more reasons to keep playing. Probably the biggest deciding factor here is how much you care about online play. If that's a huge deal for you, then Sparking Zero is the clear winner. But if you're like me and don't really care about online at all, then Tenkaichi 4 gives you a lot more to sink your teeth into outside of standard versus matches. At the end of the day though, the real winners here are us, the fans. After years of waiting, we finally have not one but two incredible Dragon Ball games to dive into. And does it even really matter if one is better than the other? I mean, I don't care. Do you? Of course you do. The internet always cares. There has to be a clear, definitive winner. It's Tenkaichi 4, by the way.